Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the County Seat. We are bringing you this episode from St. George, Utah, where we are attending the annual convention of the Utah Association of Counties. This is an annual event where county elected officials and department heads get a chance to collaborate with each other to improve their skills and their understanding of their fiduciary responsibility to us, the citizens. But in particular, it's critically important to those newly elected to public office, because along with the title, there comes a lot of responsibility, and there are a lot of footnotes that need to be filled in. Well, this is an opportunity for UAC to help them to get up to speed on how to be a good elected official.
Nearly a month ago, we participated in the quintessential act of self-governance, an election. Now that it's passed, there are dozens of new officials about to take over jobs in Utah government, and for them the question is, what's next? Do any of us really know what we're getting into when we run for office and win?
Well, this is kind of a unique situation because we've got more newly elected officials this cycle than we've had in decades. A lot of these newly elected county officials are coming in from the private sector. And so the language, the vocabulary of county government is something completely foreign to them.
So the first step for these fresh public servants is a crash course in county government.
Any intensive job like these newly elected officials are walking into, there's going to be a learning curve. And county government, it's a large learning curve. And mostly because it's so much different than so many of these people. Their experiences before, every one of them is highly qualified. Every one of them has lots of life experience. But serving as an elected county official, they're going to face challenges they've never faced before.
To help facilitate the transition, a new program has been introduced this year that goes beyond the typical orientation training.
We're trying to match up people who come from roughly the same size county, county officials who hold the same office, and that way these newly elected officials have somebody that they can call, reach out to when they have questions that maybe someone in their office can't answer for them.
So, what is the reaction to a few days of vigorous training among newly elected officials?
I came into this having been involved in county government indirectly through the Chamber of Commerce. I felt like I knew what I was getting into. I did not. There's so much more depth.
My head is swimming right now. It really is. I'm impressed with our other commissioners that were here that they know a lot, and they have a lot of opportunity to interact with other commissioners, and you can tell they've had a lot of conversations back and forth.
I'm not surprised by it, but it just reaffirms to me the quality of people that run for elected office. They're dedicated, they believe in many of the issues that are very important to them. They have commitment to it. They take their public office as a form of trust. And this is a start. It kind of gives you a little jump off, gives you an idea of what's out there, and kind of gives you some basic tools to get started on it. And then we just go out and get to work.
Now, anyone can run for office. This is a belief that goes back as far as our founding fathers. But if you win, to hit the ground running, it's good to have some knowledge about that office you campaigned for. For the County Seat, I'm Terry Wood.
We will go from the basic training into a discussion with seasoned county commissioners to talk about some of the other benefits of their association with UAC. On our roundtable discussion, we'll be right back with the County Seat.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
Why is it that environmental protection and economic development are often placed at odds with each other? In Duchesne County, they have both. Here, modern industry and resource development go hand in hand with some of the most pristine wilderness in the western United States. A strong economy balanced with a lifestyle of exploration and discovery. But don't take my word for it. Go visit them. Duchesne County. Close enough for business. Far enough to get away.
Planning your next conference or corporate event? The Davis Conference Center offers 70,000 square feet of flexible meeting and exhibit space, plus high-tech audio-visual services that will make your event a success. Whether you're planning a training, meeting, company retreat, wedding, or large convention, let the staff at the Davis Conference Center help you arrange your next event. Located east of I-15 in Layton, call 801-416-8888 or visit davisconferencecenter.com today.
You go through the day-to-day repeating what you did yesterday. Don't you wish you could access that piece of your life that's missing? Find the beauty, serenity, family fun, or anything else that's missing from your life in the Cedar City, Bryan Head area. Gain access to your adventure, whether it's camping, hiking, the arts, festivals, or just a getaway. Visit cedarcityayl.com for details on all the adventures that you can access in scenic southern Utah.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today, we are discussing the Utah Association of Counties and its role in bringing newly elected officials up to speed. So you've kind of got an idea of what the indoctrination ceremony is like. Now we're going to take a look at what really hits the ground when we have newly elected officials. Joining us for the conversation, Adam Trupp, who is the CEO of the Utah Association of Counties, Alan Gardner, a Washington County Commissioner, and a relative newcomer, Shawn Milne from Tooele County. But you've got 2 years under your belt.
So far.
So far. You're still showing up to work every day.
This is true.
That's a good sign. So, you know, as I've tried to explain UAC to people before, because every now and then they'll ask me a question, they'll say, well, you know, what exactly is it? And I get to the part of new candidates, and so it's, you know, I reach for a way to describe it, because it's not quite boot camp or basic training, but it's kind of like that. How would you describe the services you provide for new commissioners and assessors and things?
Well, we try to be a little less directive than boot camp, I think, but what we are trying to do really is give people a chance to get together to realize that they have colleagues who have gone through the same thing that they're about to go through as they enter a new office, as they take on a lot of responsibilities, many of which are very public. And we try to let them know that there are people out there they can speak to and they can rely on. So part of what we do, as you've seen, is a classroom type of education. But I think really the biggest thing that we do is we allow people to come together with their colleagues, talk to people who hold the same or similar office, and talk about what can I expect, how do I deal with these problems, and just know there's somebody there to support them.
What is the most valuable part of these meetings? Because basically UAC meets 4 times a year for at least commissioners. What do you get out of it?
For me, it's a networking with peers from other counties, so you can learn from the knowledge base that's inherent with so many other individuals that have been here before us.
I mean, were there surprises after you were elected?
Oh, yes. Running a campaign is one thing, but it's awfully important to the job. The stress, knowing how to cope with it, public speaking, although those are very important once you have the job as well. But certainly after you're on the other side and you start to really sit down with the department heads, whether other elected officials over their particular departments are appointed, and their staff members, and you can't forget the staff members, you got to sit down with those on the front lines. And you really start to understand what the different roles of the different offices are. I would say there was a considerable learning curve for me, and I imagine there probably is for most.
I'd say my learning curve was about like that.
Yeah.
You know, no curve, it was just a straight line about. So.
Do you ever feel overwhelmed?
Oh yes, I still do on some issues. That I mean, the issues are changing constantly. A lot of them are very consistent, and you know, we've been dealing with roads ever since, well, long before I was elected, and that issue's still there. We're still, you know, hopefully we have an end in sight, but yeah, there's new issues coming all the time, and you just try and stay abreast.
One of our goals at UAC really is to try to find ways that we can bring people together and try to benefit from some economies of scale by saying, hey, we've got some small counties here, small population counties here, pull them together. What can we do to make something work for all of them together? Handle that in a way that maybe a Washington County can do on its own, but allow those smaller counties to do some of those things together. the only way you decide that is by getting people together in the same place and talking to colleagues about what you need and how you might achieve it.
Have you been able to use this as a sounding board? I mean, how often do you call UAC or another member to try and work your way through a problem?
I would say with a great deal of frequency, certainly more often during the legislative session. The last couple of years that I've been on board, I've spent a great deal during the legislative session up in the Capitol, and we have our weekly meetings. So UAC's vitally important for all of us to get together and to very much have what you've just asked, a sounding board, to see what everybody's opinions are from the different counties and the different populaces that they represent. And I gotta say, that's very important. I don't even know that you could assign a value to it other than to just say it is, generally speaking, very important to be able to work with your peers, find out what it is that they may be doing that you could borrow from, and it's probably something you may not have thought of, or they've implemented it a little bit ahead of you, whether by years or a few months, to be able to find out, okay, so what were the challenges you guys have encountered that have been here and done this before? And how we might improve from that and avoid some of the same pitfalls, especially when creating something new or different for the first time.
Now, I think now, I'll call, depending on what issues are going on, sometimes you'll talk to commissioners around the state several times in one day, sometimes it's a few times in a week. But so it's much easier now with email that, you get a chain of email going back and forth between a group, and you're able to carry on a regular communication, and over the course of a day or a week as it continues, just depending on the issue. But there's more than just the telephone that we have now to keep in touch with each other. So that's a whole new aspect that's come into play in the last few years.
Do you think the relationship changes between in those conversations that you now email have, because you get together face to face on a consistent basis?
Well, getting face to face is a lot. That's a preferable way. But so these meetings that we have occasionally during the year are very helpful. But you still have to have the communication. But if you have the face to face communication, why I think your emails or your telephone conversations can be much more effective.
Agreed.
We're going to take a quick break here. We'll be back with the county seat. We are talking about the Utah Association of Counties. It's Indoctrination Day. It's boot camp day for the newly elected officials. And we'll talk about the continuing education side of this when we come back from our commercial break. You're watching the county seat right here on ABC4.
Let's be honest, you don't know much about Beaver County. Well, let me tell you about it. It's the birthplace of outlaw Butch Cassidy and inventor Philo T. Farnsworth. Some of the best skiing in Utah is at Eagle Point. You've got camping, Canyon Breeze Golf Course, Crusher and the Tushers, Beaver Territorial Courthouse, snowmobiling, renewable energy, Pioneer Car Show, Squeaky Cheese, Ghost Towns to explore, best water in the country, Paiute ATV trails, Old Frisco Kilns, horse races, hunting, fishing, and it's a good place to live. Beaver County, mountains of fun. I could tell you more, but why don't you come and see it for yourself?
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
The Bear Lake Valley is a beautiful, rural, historical, and recreational paradise. The changing of the season makes now a great time to come our way to see the warm colors of fall in contrast with the cool blues of Bear Lake. Visit us in the Bear Lake Valley. Come for the ride, stay for the adventure.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah County? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today is about the Utah Association of Counties. This is the time of year where they have their annual convention. The newly elected officers, and there are many of them around the state this year, get their first exposure as to what they got themselves in for when they got elected. So we're going to return to our conversation. And it's not just this one indoctrination or the networking that goes on. UAC provides a lot of ongoing services. Can you list a few of them, Adam?
Well, we have routine meetings throughout the year. We have a management conference that sort of focuses on management issues, and then our annual convention that focuses on a whole range of matters. We do provide legislative information and background, as well as proposals on positions to take on legislation. We represent these folks while they're out doing their regular work in legislative meetings or in other committees that are working on ideas for legislation. So that is a supplement to our educational processes also, which we partner with other entities on too. So it's a whole range of activities to try to help people get a handle on all of the detail, at least to understand the scope of the detail that they have to deal with, hopefully give them a little bit of attention ahead of time to those, knowledge of those.
You know, it's always surprising to me that people will think that the governor's office and the legislature and all these counties are all in lockstep together, and they get together and play croquet on the weekends and have a barbecue, but it's really not that kind of relationship. The legislative part ends up being one of the more important functions for the association. Is that not correct?
That is one very important part that we have, yes. When the legislature's in session, we're there with both eyes open and both ears fully attuned. So you never know what's going to come out of some of the legislation that's there.
I continually see a trend, and I don't think any of you would ever bring it up, but I'm going to, because I'm not going to get a nasty phone call from somebody. But it seems like quite often when they're dealing with a tough problem, the state legislature has a tendency to just say, oh, well, let's just kick this down to the counties and let them take care of it, and they avoid having to deal with tough tax and budgetary issues, and the counties end up with unfunded mandates. Now, am I up in the night thinking that that actually happens?
No.
Would you care to expand on that a little bit, Shawn?
No.
I would say that is always a threat, and we're always concerned about that. I think a couple of things. One, with the governor we have in office now, who's been there for a while, he certainly understands that. He's been in the county position. He's been a local government representative or official. He knows, and he's cautious about that as a result. So is his staff. But I think we've had good response from the legislature too. They've almost gone the other way sometimes, though, of saying, well, we don't want you to have a certain authority for tax or for fees, because we want to make sure that we're keeping the lid on those things. And I think we can understand that. That's a fiscally conservative approach. So it's a challenge. It's always one of those things that we're worried about and have to be aware of. But I think we've been okay in recent years. But it happens.
I think we've been able to, being up there while the legislature's in session, we've been able to work through probably most of the issues that we've had. Not all of them, but I think a good share of them. We've been able to sit down and talk them through. And
for the most part, when you come up against a legislator that has proposed something that you guys at the county level look at and say, oh, this is going to be horrible, when you get to them, is it that they intended to do it, or they just didn't kind of play the chess game far enough down the board?
And I think that's what it really comes down to, is your latter point. And I believe that's why UAC is so vitally important to the counties, because as a facilitator, sometimes they're a mediator, but many times they facilitate these meetings weekly and more frequently as needed among, say, commissioners and council, every affiliate group that there is, whether it be assessors or treasurers, clerk auditors, et cetera. And while those pieces of legislation are working their way through the Capitol, we have the opportunity to give input and to smooth out some of those rough edges. So it can happen. I don't think that it's for nefarious purposes, but certainly sometimes we scratch our heads and wonder, how did that possibly happen?
Well, this is a good point for us to take a break. We will take a break and be right back with the county seat. When we return, we are going to talk about stripping away the layers of pomp and circumstance and really dissect what county elected officials are and what their job description is. Stay with us. We'll be right back with County Seat.
You often hear people say, think outside the box. But maybe it's time you take a moment and look inside. It's time to think inside the box. Box Elder County.
I let me be me. Oh, you know that I'm finally free. You know that let me be me. Oh, you know that I'm finally free to be me.
A powder day in the trees, a morning of crisp air and blue skies, a winter destination in your own backyard. Tooele County is all of them in one. It's time to experience a new adventure you never knew you were missing. It's time to find out what's just over the mountain. Tooele County, Utah. The Wasatch Front is your home. Tooele is your backyard.
I lived in Phoenix and then down in Orange County in California, and I met a small town girl and she brought me home. Just the smaller community that makes you feel like when you go somewhere you know everybody. You know, the sporting programs, the dance events, all these kinds of things, you run into people you know and that care about you and your family. And that makes it just a wonderful place to have little ones like this.
Isn't it time you found the balance you've been looking for? Uinta County, Utah.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today is about the Utah Association of Counties and what services it provides. Now, we spent a good portion of the last segment talking about the sometimes contentious, sometimes friendly, but workable relationship with the Utah State Legislature and the Governor's Office. What tools does UAC provide when we are dealing with national issues? Because for one little organization out of Utah to go to the president's office or to the head of the Department of Interior is not going to carry a lot of weight. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I think there's two primary areas. One of them is we rely on those people within our organization who have built up relationships at the federal level, and we have plenty of those people. Certainly Alan's been here around for a while. He's known to our congressional delegation and staff. We can rely on him and others in that type of situation. We also have staff who are very well connected and know people well in DC, and it's a great thing to be able to say who's the right person to talk to in this situation and how do we pull in our support for that. But we also are tied into a national association of counties, which is 5,000 counties across the country, and they bring together a voice that's even stronger at that level because they have Washington lobbyists, they have people who know the environment back there, which is very different than we know at home. And that's a great tool and a great benefit, and we participate with that too. And again, how do you get up against Goliath? Well, you have to have some strength and you have to have some backbone to do it, and that's what we try to help.
So here we are, Utah's perceived as a pretty little state. And you've got NACO, a big national association. We're 29 of those 5,000 counties. Do they ever listen to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the committees, we're very well represented on some of the committees, and those committees, particularly, we've had some great input and been able to direct a lot of the efforts from them. You know, I'm on the Public Lands Committee. I went there 17 years ago, and I'm still there, been in leadership on that for probably 10, 11 years now. So it gives us an opportunity to keep our issues before the national group, but most of our issues are the same issues that other counties in other states are having, so it lets us come together and speak as one voice on the issue, and that's what's so important. That's what brings the weight behind it, because we go to our delegation and these other states go to their delegations, and we even have eastern states that are becoming active now in the Public Lands Committee, because they have some isolated pockets of national forest or whatever it might be, and so we can go to their delegations as well, and it really gives us an audience that we wouldn't have.
How would you compare this to somebody who doesn't know government, if you were to compare a county executive's job?
Well, I think that a county executive is a perfect example, or a county commissioner. It's an example of somebody who is actually on the board of directors or the chair of the board of directors of a corporation. A county has a huge range of functions, as you know from things you've covered in this program. And there are, in most counties, there's either a county executive or a county commission, a small group, and then a legislative body in some. They have to be able to manage the operations of that county as a commissioner. You have to be an executive for that county. That's not a small task. It's like running a pretty substantially large business. In fact, if you look at any of the elected officials in county government, they have to be not only a manager of an office, but they have to be a subject matter expert for the work that they're doing, and they have to manage what they're handling. County attorneys, I'd put a county attorney's job up as a comparison against any CEO's position. The range of subject matter they have to understand and advice they have to give is tremendous, for everything from prosecution to HR to internal operations of county government. That's a pretty substantial task. It's a big job.
Not to mention operating their own budgets as well. So.
Absolutely, and managing to do it all without running up debt.
So I only have a few quick questions, just to drive home that point. What kind of budget are you guys working with?
How so? What do you
How big? In other words, we just compared you to a CEO.
Depends. With the general fund, we might be looking in the low to mid 20s with all of the different funds that we'll manage, because there's different pots of money that sometimes folks don't conceptualize very easily, but $50 million.
$50 million. You're managing a $50 million organization. What about you guys in Washington?
Our $28 million rounds our general fund, but as you say, you get this pot and this pot that come together, and what people don't realize a lot is, you may have a tax coming in, but it's specified that you can only use it in this area here. And so this fund may be pretty well, good shape, and some of the other funds are lacking. And so you have to keep all of that in balance. You can't just pull it out of this fund and move it over to that fund where you may really need it. So,
and by the way, every 4 years the shareholders get to decide whether to keep you, right?
Yeah, that's right. Gentlemen, thank you so much for the conversation today. It's been a good roundtable. Hope you'll come back again sometime, and we want to thank you for inviting us into your homes to watch the county seat. You can watch it again and tell your friends about it. We'd particularly like to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't ever have to go searching for that episode of the county seat. You can just go through your emails and say, hey, it's time to watch the county seat again. We'll look for you next week on the county seat. If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4 Utah.